Hey, it's Brian Burns. Welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. This is one of those weeks where you really do want to check out the B2B Revenue Show. I've got Amit, the CEO and founder of Gong.io, and we're talking about conversational intelligence. And we really get into exactly where it is today, where it's going, and why it's so important. I think too often we look at sales calls as binary. It was really good, or it's not really good. Instead of a spectrum, rating ourselves, rating the customer, rating the likelihood that they are really going to take action, that they're going to take the next step, and how well we did. Did we build rapport? Did we transition from rapport to interest? Were our questions useful? Did we handle the objections well? Did we ask for a next step? All of those things, we all need coaching. I've been doing this forever. I still need to outline my calls. I still need to review them, and I still mess up. So don't ever think that you're going to get past that. I don't think I'm going to get past it. You can plan all you want, but still, we have to go through this learning process. So check out that interview. Hey, I also want to give you an update on the courses. From now until December 31st, the prices are going to stay the same, and they're going to include the one-on-ones. But January 1st, I'm probably not going to be offering the one-on-ones to any new students. I'm getting kind of overwhelmed with them. But lock that in, because that's a key element. You'll still have the office hours. You'll still have access to all the other one-on-ones from existing clients and students, which gives you the community sense where you get real use cases instead of just the generic content. So you'll have content, community with the office hours, and the one-on-ones for a full year. So you get a year-long access, and you can do a payment all at once or in monthly payments. Also, just a lot of people are like, I'm trying to get my manager to pay for it. First, I think you should pay for it, because then you're committed. Then you're invested. Then you're going to participate because it's your money. But a lot of us, if you can sneak it through on the expense report, or send your manager an email, explain that you've been listening to the podcast for a couple of months. I'll probably write this up and put it in the show notes for you just so you have it there. And that if you close even just one new deal, it'll pay for itself, that you really want to improve. And tell your manager that you're coachable, that you really want to get better at this game, and you'll share what you learn with other people on the team. And would it be okay if you expensed it? I bet it would go through. And I got to tell you, if I was the manager and I heard that, I go, you go for it. You know, someone's going to make the investment, somebody who doesn't think they know it all, somebody who wants to improve. Believe me, every manager wants that. Every manager wants somebody who's going to step up and take action. So check that out at b2brevenue.com. And then it's under the training tab. If you want to talk it over before you sign up, that's fine. I'd be happy. There's a calendar link in there, but that's solely for talking about the course. If you want consulting, there's links in the training course to buy consulting. Also, check out Pipedrive. Pipedrive's got new capabilities for the enterprise: segmentation, access control to the accounts, email tracking. It's really turning into an enterprise CRM, and they have huge clients. And I'm working together with them on some great content, so make sure you sign up for their blog at a minimum. If you already have it, there's a tell a friend capability where you get a discount for every person you get to sign up, so you share that either individually or through social media. So tell a friend over at pipedrive.com. What else? Nudge. Are you using Nudge yet? Get on it. Brutal Truth is the coupon code for both Pipedrive and Nudge. Check them out. Also, Co-Video, they got the templates for the holidays. You got to be sending video emails. Try it for a month. See how well it does. Video is the new text. I'm telling you, video has blown up my business this year. Let's get into the interview, and I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Diane, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, it's so nice to have you invite me here, because I'm usually the one on the other end of the microphone. So it's kind of fun to be on this side. Thank you. I have a radio show as well, but my background is I have several decades of sales experience, which I know your listeners are very much interested in that aspect. But I've also been in education. I've taught for multiple universities. I used to be the MBA program chair at the Forbes School of Business, and I've written several books. I have another one coming out next year at the beginning of the year. And I am an expert of behavioral issues like emotional intelligence, curiosity, and that type of thing. So that gives you a little bit of background.
And well, let's start with your sales experience. How'd you get into sales? What you like about it?
Well, my first sales job was selling System 36s and 38s as a VAR with IBM. So we did that in the 80s. I mean, it's been a while. And I really kind of fell into it right out of college, looking for your first job out of college. And everybody in my family had gone into sales. So we were all super extroverted, and it was kind of a natural fit. And that led to pharmaceutical sales. I stayed with the pharmaceutical job for maybe 15 years. So I was in that for probably the longest amount of time. And I really liked that. But then I'm kind of a geek. I like the paperwork. Very unusual for a salesperson.
That's the first time I've heard that.
I know. Everybody thinks it's really weird. But I thought, well, what's the most paperwork job you can get in sales? And I thought, well, I really wasn't thrilled with pharmaceutical sales. And I thought I would try being a loan officer, because I thought, well, that's a lot of paperwork. And it was, and I liked it. But it was also long hours and weekends, different things. I went into real estate after that. And I really ended up in education for the longest time. And I still teach quite a bit. And I teach marketing and sales in a lot of courses, because I've taught more than 1,000 business courses now in my history. And sales comes up in just about everything.
And how'd you get curious about curiosity? I mean, that seems, well, it doesn't seem unusual. It's actually pretty obvious in sales that is a superpower that we all should develop.
I agree. A lot of salespeople don't ask the right questions. I have a mortifying sales story of my own. If you're interested, it's not a long
Sure.
one. Okay. When I was a pharmaceutical rep, this is to bring up the power of asking questions and being interested in the other person and having curiosity. I apparently did not do very well at that when I was young. I was a pharmaceutical rep in a building where it was a couple stories tall, and you'd get in the elevator, you go up to see the doctor, and you'd wait in the office, and they'd finally call you back. And I was one of the first calls I'd made, and I was pretty nervous because I wanted to get in my 3 products. It was really hard to get these doctors to sit still for more than 5 seconds, and you had to try and get 3 products in. And so I got in, and he actually let me talk, and I was like so excited, because a lot of these guys wouldn't even talk to you. And I got in all 3 products, and I walked out going, wow, this is really great. I'm so proud of myself. And I go down to my car to get more samples. And so as I get in the elevator, this other gentleman gets on with me, and I, being the true extrovert, can't handle dead air. So I said, so do you work in the building? And he looks at me, he goes, you just gave me a presentation. Doctor. I didn't even look at him. I was so obsessed with what I wanted to say. I didn't even recognize him or have any kind of conversation. I just talked right at him. So that maybe that opened me up to wanting to study curiosity, because I saw how bad it was to not ask questions. But actually, as I went through my career, I started to see a lot of my students really kind of just wanted me to tell them how to do things without explaining any reasoning. They wanted to kind of do things for them. And I started interviewing such interesting people. I've had everybody from Steve Forbes to Ken Fisher and Keith Kroc and really big names in business on my show. And they were just highly curious individuals, and they were so successful. So I started to research like what, the background of what makes people curious. And as I started to do that for my book, I started to realize that it was more important to kind of not only explain what curiosity was, but to figure out what's holding curiosity back, what's inhibiting it. So I created a curiosity code index to go along with the book, which is kind of a personality, kind of a test. Like if you took DISC or Myers-Briggs or emotional intelligence, how you take assessment and they give you results. Well, it was like that to go along with it, because I want to be able to fix it for people if they have a problem with it. And it's been really super exciting. It's going to launch soon. And I have a lot of big name companies that are really interested in it. And it's been a lot of fun.
So you obviously feel it's something that you can teach.
I do. I think that a lot of people have their natural sense of curiosity as a child, and then things will impact it. And what I found were 4 factors impact your curiosity, and they're fear, assumptions, technology, and environment. So I use the acronym FATE to remember it. But I think you can control that. I think you can recognize what has held you back. A lot of in sales, fear is a big one, and environment is a big one because you've been shut down so many times. Sometimes it makes it very difficult, and especially leaders of salespeople maybe even are the problem. That they shut down innovative ideas that maybe would be very successful just because they have always been taught a certain way, that you only do things this way. And I think it's really important to recognize some of the things that are holding people back from being more open with questions, open with suggestions. And I think that you really need to look at some of those fears and assumptions, thinking that you're not interested in something, or something's going to be hard, or whatever our assumptions are. And the technology involved sometimes is intimidating, and our environment often is very strong influence. Even our childhood, our parents, our teachers, and our current leadership.
And that's it, because when I talk to sales leaders all the time, and I always ask them, what do they look for in great reps? How are the great reps different than the good reps? And it always comes down to, are they coachable is always number one. Are they empathetic? Number 2, and then are they curious? Number 3. Now,
right.
If you were to say, well, what do you look for in an interview? Most of them would say outgoing, confident, gregarious, those type of things. But so those are almost in conflict.
Well, it's interesting because there's been a lot of things you talked about. Empathy is a big part of emotional intelligence, and I wrote my doctoral dissertation on emotional intelligence. So I'm very familiar with studying empathy and emotional intelligence in salespeople, because that was what my dissertation was. It was in mortgage salespeople specifically. And you really want to develop those things. And that's another thing you can improve. It's not fixed. It can be improved. And any of the organizations I speak with, they're very interested in developing emotional intelligence, specifically empathy and interpersonal skills, and a lot of the things that salespeople really need. That does not conflict with being confident or outgoing or gregarious. You can have all of these qualities. What's interesting to me is the more I see some introverts in sales, that because sales has kind of changed. It used to be, here's your phone book, dial for dollars, and it's all you. This is your territory. Nobody's going to help you sink or swim, right? But now they have these teams where this person does this and this person does that. And sometimes on sales teams, it's good to have introverts to be there to just ask more questions, to have, they tend to have a lot of empathy and understanding, and it's not the way it used to be. There's different types of sales settings now. And I think a lot of these things, you can't pick a one size fits all, because the team is going to be different. It's not just one person anymore.
So, let's say you're a rep, you want to move to the next level. You've kind of become coachable. You've developed some empathy. How do you develop your curiosity?
Well, that's what I was working on for this. And what we do is, first of all, you have to get a baseline. You have to know where you stand, and you have to know how those 4 factors are impacting you. So I did a lot of factor analysis, which is even more geeky, statistical analysis for the last couple of years. I've been researching to make sure that these are the 4 factors and that they align, and they do. And what you can do is take a curiosity code index as the assessment, and they could take that and find out how much fear, how much, assumptions, technology, and environment impact them. And then it breaks it down under each category into specific areas. So it might be fear of competition. It might be fear of looking stupid. It might be fear of different things, right? So it'll give you your scores. It'll also give you feedback, like, this is maybe, consider this. Could it be this that is causing your problem? And if it is, maybe here's some suggested techniques. Then it also has you create an action plan for each of your issues that maybe didn't come in very high, that you needed to build up a little bit. And what is also nice is in the training program, if they go through the training programs with an HR professional or a consultant or anybody in their organization, if they hold them in the company, that they'll go through another exercise where they create a plan for the organization to help the leaders, to give them ideas of what would help them be more curious. So it's a two-part training program if they actually go through it that way, which is kind of nice.
And how did you structure your book? Because I could see something like this going in a million different directions.
Well, it could, and I looked at a lot of the different aspects of, what is the thing that everybody's talking about? They're talking about engagement, right? They're talking about innovation. They're talking about critical thinking. So my book dives into all those areas. They talk, I'm dealing with even emotional intelligence, but intelligence in general. So creativity. And so I talk about so many things as far as what organizations and leaders and everybody's worried about and how curiosity impacts that. Then I go into what are the roadblocks. I talk about what holds us back, and I go into all the 4 areas, and then what to do about it. So I kind of have it 3 parts, I guess I would say, kind of a background, and then how to fix it.
And let's start with like what's holding people back. Is it that they don't want to appear stupid, or they want to feel confident?
Well, it's a combination of things. It is, under fear, those are kind of the things that come into the fear category, right? So you have, you could have had somebody that shut you down in the past, and you don't want to experience that again. You suggested something, somebody gave you more work. You don't want to have that again.
God forbid.
It's certain things like that, right? That come into fear. Assumptions, what would hold you back? You think something's going to be boring. You've done it in the past and you didn't like it, so you assume you're not going to like it again. There's a lot of different assumptions we make that something is just not what you think it really is, because you've never really opened yourself up to the experience of it. And with technology, some of the roadblocks are just, you can have an overlap with fear of that. You can have a fear of technology. You can have just overwhelmed by it, or not knowing where to start by it, or let it do everything for you, which is even more problematic sometimes, because then you don't even understand the basics for what reasoning is behind things, which kind of hurts critical thinking. And then environment is a lot, like we mentioned, as far as, it could be your boss, or it could be your family, your friends, your teachers. Maybe teachers had to teach to the test. They couldn't answer your questions. Maybe you would have loved to know more about art, or you would have loved to know more about this or that. You never got to ask because they had to teach. They had only limited time. Maybe your family thought you should be a policeman or a salesperson or whatever it is, and you don't really like that. But you've always thought that that's what our family does. So, there's so many factors that this assesses. I really look at quite a bit with each one. I mean, we're looking at about 36 different factors in total.
And when you talk to somebody, how do you determine their level of curiosity and emotional intelligence?
Well, that's a really tough thing to just see on the surface. That's why I think you need assessments to get a really accurate, idea. With emotional intelligence, if they're saying really rude and insulting things, it's kind of more obvious. But with curiosity, I would say people who are hold things in and don't ask a lot of questions could be introverted and just be thinking about it. You know what I mean? It's hard to tell if they aren't curious just because they haven't asked the question. They might be formulating and being pensive. You know what I mean? So it's kind of something that you really, I think that's why I was so shocked that there wasn't another assessment like this. When I started looking, I kept seeing all these assessments to measure curiosity to tell you if you were or you weren't, but not what was stopping you from it. And I saw so much research showing that, you have this great level when you're young, and then around, after 4 years old, 6 years old, you start getting this drop. And then by the 4th grade, it's really starting to get really low. And I think a lot of it is, the education system, the family, there's so many things. I think you probably drive your family crazy if you say why after 2 years old. Eventually you're going to get, because I said so.
Could you say why in a different way? Yeah.
Right.
Well, I probably interviewed 1,000 salespeople, and I can always tell the ones that it's all about them. They're asking about the comp plan, the vacation, the territory, but they're not asking, how do you sell the product? How do the deals work? They're not showing, interest, never mind curiosity.
Well, yeah, I often tell people that they should be asking about what's your R&D, what's your pipeline, what's the company doing? I mean, if somebody comes to an interview, when I was hiring people for sales and they didn't know every single thing about my company, I'd be like, yeah, well, forget it. I'm not interested. You didn't care enough to look. So, I mean, that's a big red flag. And if you're going on an interview for a sales job and you don't know every product that you're going to be selling pretty much, as much as you can on the internet, and know what the company's got coming out, and just be inquisitive about what it is that they're trying to do and how what you do will contribute to the overall, end goals of the organization, then that's a big signal. Because, that's another thing I wrote about was engagement. Everybody, there's so much talk about Gallup's numbers of how only a third of the workplace is engaged, which means most people are not, and they don't really like what they're doing. They're just kind of existing. And if people could ask questions and know how that what they do contributes to the overall goals of the organization, and all of those things all tie in together, and it all comes back to curiosity impacting engagement.
And it seems like kind of on a more advanced skill, because most of us, we've been bred or evolved to really be living in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And curiosity takes us out of the moment.
Well, it can make the moment more interesting, but it'll also, it can make you more optimistic and have more foresight, which you really do need foresight. I mean, if you've read Stephen Covey's book about the 7 habits of highly successful people, the first habit is being proactive, right? So you really, to be successful, you should be considering the future and thinking ahead, especially now with AI. It's such a big hot topic. Everybody is going to have to be on the top of their game to keep their jobs, because you don't know what AI is going to be able to do, that you've been doing all along. So I really think being curious about what the next job, what the next step is, what the next innovation is, all of that is really important. And that all comes down to curiosity. Yeah.
And can you really learn without being curious? Or is it just memorization?
It's funny because I had one of the first VPs from Apple on my show who wrote a book about that. And he did really well in the Ivy League schools. He was like, graduated, top of his class, but it was just because he was great, he says, is the only reason, but I don't know if that's the only reason. He says it's because he was very good at memorizing. And he thought that was really not a good thing. And he realizes that, I think he said it was on his final exam. He got in there and they asked a question that nobody had ever asked in class, or wasn't in the reading. It was, just based off of, if you knew that, you could answer it, right? But he just memorized. And he said he just went cold, And if you just simply memorize, it's not the same. You're not really a critical, creative thinker. And I think that a lot of us are taught to just do that. And I think it's really important to change education up to some extent, where you're extrapolating and doing more than just simply memorizing.
And do you feel the school system kind of works curiosity out of us?
I think it can. I think that it doesn't have to. I think that it has in a lot of cases, and not that there aren't great teachers, but a lot of the systems are set up to reward teaching to the test, and it's just, everybody does what they think works. Nobody's setting out really to deliberately make people less curious, but it's, that has been the unfortunate impact of some of the things that we've tried, is some of them just don't work.
And that's it. We're kind of socialized to learn something, memorize it, then try and apply it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But
they
then
do more of that in college, I think. I think I see a lot of that. I've never taught undergrad. I mean, I've taught undergrad, but not K through 12, I should say. I have not taught. So I can't tell you what they're doing as far as that goes, but I can tell you in college level courses that they could do more.
Yeah. And I think sales is so much curiosity. It's like wondering, how are you going to get somebody to understand what you want them to understand?
It's a lot of reading people and understanding what to ask. When I was in one of my mortgage sales jobs, they had us take a personality test and put our personality type on our cubicle so that everybody knew exactly what you were, if you were a red, a green, a blue, or a yellow. And so you didn't even have to ask, because you could just look at their wall and know who they were, kind of. And I can't say that it was absolutely accurate, but it was an interesting experiment in a way, because you'd get, the greens were pretty much extroverts and the reds were the direct kind of people. And those were pretty much what you found in salespeople. And in sales, every once in a while, a yellow would sneak in, and a yellow was, more of an engineer, the guy that reads the manual from front to back kind of person, right? And we would just all kind of bet how long this person would stay there, because we knew they wouldn't stay. They never did. And it was just not a good job fit for them. And I think there are certain types of personality types that lend themselves to sales. And I don't know if reading manuals from front to back is necessarily the best quality for a salesperson, but I think curiosity definitely is. And I think people can get better. I think a lot of them were trained the way I was, like, you have to say this, you have to say that, and you forget to ask questions because you're so concerned about getting out what you want to say.
Yeah. And trying to understand their world, what their day is like, because, just talking about features and benefits or even pains are helpful. But if you're not connecting with the other person about what they're going through, how are you going to really forecast what they're going to do next?
It's tough. I had a really good boss that was, he would walk into the room with me when I was in pharmaceutical sales, and he would look around the room, and he knew exactly where the guy went to school, where she went to, where her kids went, whatever it was. He knew. He'd read the room. He'd look at all the diplomas. He'd look at whatever knickknacks they had on the desk, and he'd find something to connect with every time. And I was so young at the time. I think I was probably 23, and I'm watching him and I'm thinking, wow, I didn't even notice. I'm looking around like, what's he looking at? Because I couldn't even see. But he learned how to hone his ability to figure out, to find that common ground, and to really be interested in other people and to ask questions. And it really opened up the door for a great conversation.
And yeah, I've followed a lot of like FBI negotiators and body language readers.
Mm-hmm.
And they look for these nuances and then kind of align themselves with that person.
Yeah. Chris Voss was on my show. Have you interviewed him?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. He's great.
And that's it. And it really is that, I don't know what kind of empathy he calls it. But, he uses his voice, he uses his pacing, he puts himself in their place.
It's really important. I had another body language expert on my show today. It's a popular thing. You got the TV shows, Lie to Me and Bull, and those they popularize it. But there is a lot to be said for that, and it's tough when you have to do your calls. Not in person, either on the phone or some other way. After being in pharmaceuticals for so many years, when I went into lending, I took a job in a subprime, actually, lending, where they just basically handed you the phone book and said, here's your territory, just dial. And I had never done any sales where I couldn't use, your smile or whatever it is that gets you in the door. And it was a unique experience to take away that level of interaction, because you have no body language. You have voice and very little, you have tone, you have certain things, but it's a lot more challenging.
It is, yeah. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where do people get the book, learn more about your work, and connect with you?
Well, the book is on curiositycode.com. That's CuriosityCode.com, my website, and every place. Really, I'm at Dr. Diane Hamilton, so that's DrDianeHamilton.com for my website, or on Twitter, it's the same. And LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, I'm just about everywhere, so they can connect with me, and I'd be happy to chat with them. On my website, there right now, the book is, we're scheduled to launch January 28th, 2019. In the meantime, you can get a free chapter if you go to curiositycode.com.
Curiosity is actually like the number 3 thing that I hear from sales managers. Number 1 being coachability, number 2 being empathy, and number 3, curiosity. Now, curiosity and empathy are very tightly coupled, because you really can't be empathetic unless you're curious about the person, about what their life is like, what their day is like, how do they get rewarded, what do they care about, and then be able to align what we do towards that. Now, that seems obvious, but most people take just the opposite approach. We talk about who we are and what we do. And you should be able to do that, but you shouldn't lead with that. You have to lead with what they care about, the problems that they are facing, and what they get rewarded for, because it's very different. They don't get commission on what we sell. They get punished if it doesn't work. So they're going to be very cautious about change. So we have to walk them through that path. And curiosity gets them to pull down their defenses, because once they find out that we care about them, that we're interested in them, that we are wondering how they're doing things today and what their thoughts and feelings are about what we are talking about, that curiosity will help you understand where they're coming from, understand what they're going to do, and how you can develop your judgment on where this deal should be in your priority stack and what to do next. Instead of waiting for them to respond and you give a proposal and have them try and fit into what you want. They don't care about what you want. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I'm looking forward to reading that book. I think I'm putting that into part of the course about closing the complex sale. I think curiosity, empathy, and coachability, I'm not sure how you present those things in a course, but even if you just grade yourself on it every day, meaning like, how curious was I today about this call? After that, substantial call. I mean, like a half hour, 60-minute call. Ask yourself, was I curious enough, or was I too curious? And the time to create the curiosity is right before the call. What don't I know? What should I know? And how do I find that out? How do I develop those questions to find out that information? It becomes a superpower of very advanced salespeople. Speaking of which, have you checked out Discover.org? It's by far the best information source out there. Too many of us are spending our time rummaging through the internet and LinkedIn, trying to find out information about who might be in market, who might be interested, what the org chart looks like. Discover.org's got it all done for you. All put in a little bow for you. And as well as with Pipedrive, you got to check it out. It's really evolved. They populate the CRM with the company information, the contact stuff. And now you can automate your cadence. When you move a deal from one stage to another, you can connect that up with actions like sending an email or putting something on the calendar. Something like that is super helpful to build out your cadence. The coupon code for both Nudge.ai and Pipedrive is Brutal Truth. It's all in the show notes right below. And I really appreciate the people on LinkedIn who are telling people about the podcast via just hitting a little thumbs up when you see a video go by and following the company pages for the podcast. If you search for them, you just hit follow. You'll see some funny videos. I do a lot of walk and talks, like 1 minute kind of ideas, tips, recommendations, lessons learned, things that may help you in 1 minute. I do about one of them a day. I put them up there for you as just kind of a break in the pattern. So I really appreciate if you hit a thumbs up, put a comment, say hi. If you do connect with me on LinkedIn, tell me you're a podcast listener so I know. I'm getting overwhelmed with invite requests that I have no idea where they're coming from. So if you could do that, that'd be helpful. Please tell a friend about The Brutal Truth. Make sure you're also checking out Sales Questions podcast. I'm putting a lot of effort into that. And that's really where I answer your questions via LinkedIn or email. Any questions you have, just send them to me. I'll put it in the queue and get the answers to you as soon as I can. Make sure you're checking out the training courses at b2brevenue.com. You can schedule a call with me to talk over the course. If you want consulting, you can buy it. But if you want to talk about the course, that's the best way. We got 15 minutes. We'll talk through your situation, see if it's a match. But please be serious. That's it. We'll see you next time.
I love the approach. It's working for me just fantastic. If I sent you some of the emails, which I should, the conversations that I'm having with people, I think you'd be blown away because they're not really about work. Yeah. I've figured out if you can kind of get personal with them, like one lady, it's all about her family, kids. And then I sprinkled in a little bit around work, and she's LinkedIn, sending me messages on LinkedIn, photos of her family. No, I'm not even kidding. I should show this to you. You'd be stunned. I was shocked. And we're going to lunch on September 6th. And yesterday she shot me a LinkedIn message and said, "Hey, Ron, why don't we get on the phone and do a video call beforehand so our lunch isn't so awkward? We're like barely not meeting each other for the first time." Oh, holy cow, right? Like, this is unbelievable. So this is not the first time that this has happened. She's kind of an extreme, but I'm starting to figure out a pattern where I can actually make this a process, So
good. Yeah.
I'll show you that. So it's getting to that point. And every time I do this, I'm like, God, this is unbelievable, So.
And it feels better too, doesn't it?
Oh, Brian, let me tell you something. To be able to go to lunch with her, I'll even talk to her on the phone, right? We're going to talk about family, kids, work-life harmony. Because I shared a thing with her from Bezos about work-life harmony. This is where the conversation will start. Now, at some point, we're both not stupid, right? We know we're going to talk about work. We know why we're both there. Right. But to kick it off this way is so much better. And to end that lunch with the last 5 to 8 minutes of telling, well, what are you guys doing with digital?